Well, good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public who are watching via the live stream. Welcome to this meeting of the Customer Focus Scrutiny Committee, which is being undertaken virtually in accordance with the enacted government regulations during the current coronavirus pandemic. Before we start the meeting, can I please remind all members of the following, which I'm sure you're familiar with by now, but bear with me while I go through them one more time. Please ensure that you mute your microphones when not speaking. Please remain focused on the topic being discussed. Please try to avoid repeating points which have already been made. Please avoid interrupting other councillors and respect the position of the chair. Please remember that this meeting is still being broadcast in the normal way via Facebook Live. It is important, therefore, that members are aware that the public can hear what is being said and decided on, and that the public can see councillors as well. Please therefore take care to prevent any background distractions. With these matters in mind, can I call on Sharon Sissons to do a roll call of all councillors and officers to ascertain who is in attendance? Sharon.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Vizard.
Present.
Councillor Michael Mitchell.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Begley. Councillor Foggin.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Henson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Mitchell.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Martin. Thank you. You're just muted, but that's great. Thank you very much. Councillor Quance.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sparks.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Wardle.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Warwick.
Present.
We're also joined by the portfolio holders presenting this evening, Councillor David Harvey, portfolio holder for City Management.
Present.
Thank you. And also Councillor Amal Hussain, portfolio holder for Communities and Culture.
Present.
Thank you. And also by officers, Director Net Zero Exeter City Management, David Bartram.
Present.
Director Communications, Culture and Leisure Facilities, John Paul Hedge.
Present.
Thank you. Active and Healthy People Programme Lead, James Bogue.
Present.
Thank you. And you're supported by Democratic Services Officers Howard Bassett and myself, Sharon Sissons. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, members. The first item on the agenda this evening is apologies. Do we have any apologies, please?
No apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Howard. The next item of business is the minutes of the Customer Focus Scrutiny Committee on the 8th of October 2020. Are members who were present at that meeting happy to approve these minutes as a correct record of the proceedings? I think we'll take it as a show of hands. That should be sufficient here. So if you were present and are happy, please raise your hand now. Thank you. Looks like we have, from those present, looks like we have a unanimous verdict there. Okay, Sharon, with that?
Thank you.
Okay, lovely. I will, of course, sign the minutes of the meeting in due course when I'm able to do so. The next item on the agenda is item 3, that is the declarations of interest. And it's just a reminder that if any members have any disclosable pecuniary interests that relate to business on the agenda and have not already been included in the register of interests, to declare them before any discussion takes place on the item. The next item of business is item 4. That's the Local Government Access to Information Act 1985 for the exclusion of the press and public. And there are no part 2 items, as we call them, on the agenda this evening. This now takes us to item 5. That is questions from the public. And I understand that there have been no questions received from the public for tonight's meeting. So we will go on to item 6, and that's just to outline what's the procedure for the meeting. The Scrutiny Programme Board met on the 30th of July 2020 to consider the way forward on scrutiny and agreed that portfolio holders would be invited to offer a report to each scrutiny committee on their respective issues and work as part of the focus on the recovery stage of the COVID pandemic. Members would continue to be given the opportunity to put forward questions to the portfolio holders. The list of questions received from members has been circulated to all council members as part of an update to the published agenda. Each portfolio, questions from members of this committee are listed first, and then questions from other council members. Following the recent change in portfolio holder roles, Councillor David Harvey as portfolio holder for City Management and Councillor Amal Hussain as portfolio holder for Communities and Culture will present the respective briefing notes with David Bartram, John Paul Hedge, the directors, and James Bogue to advise as necessary. So without further ado, I will hand over to Councillor David Harvey as portfolio holder for City Management to briefly, if you would, David, present the note relevant to your portfolio, which members will have had the opportunity to read. So there's no need to repeat anything contained in the report. But if you'd like to briefly introduce it, please do. David.
I was just going to say, thank you, Matt. I was just going to say exactly that. There's no point in me reiterating what's down there on the paper, which you can all read. What I would like to say very briefly is that in this area, we've concentrated on maintaining our service. If we were to have had the difficulties that some other local authorities have had, then I would hope that the measures we have put in place in order to retain flexible staffing levels would have served us in good stead. Fortunately, we haven't been put in that position as yet, but I can assure you that we have retrained staff from various areas of the service in order that we would be able to concentrate on more vulnerable areas if that were necessary. The second concentration that we've had in this area of service has been adhering to government guidelines, and it's been a bit of a hokey-cokey, in, out, up, down, round and about, opening and closing places, skate parks, play parks, outdoor gyms, so on. And I must pay tribute to the work of our staff in going around and shutting places, then reopening them, answering questions from the public as to why this is open and that's not open, why is this open. I mean, the greatest example I can see is tennis courts. Why on earth tennis courts are closed is completely beyond me, separated by a net, whatever. Anyway, there we go. We have had several instances of poor behaviour where we have, for example, at Flower Pot Fields, put hearers fencing around the skate park in order to comply with government guidelines of closure, only for ne'er-do-wells, as I think Councillor Bialik might describe them, have destroyed the fencing and got in to use the park. We've also had to weld shut the lighting cabinet, the controls for the lighting cabinet. People have forced it open and overrun the controls so that lights could come on, they could escape late into the night. So it's not been without its difficulties and complexities, but as I'm sure you're aware, there's a lot of stuff in the report and I commend it to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harvey. Questions from members of the committee are from Councillors Kevin Mitchell and Michael Mitchell. Members are invited to read out their questions in the order as set out in the list, and the portfolio holder and or the director will respond. The member who has put the question may ask a supplementary based on the response given. Committee members who wish to raise a point of clarification after the response of the portfolio holder and director to each question, please indicate by raising a hand or by the Zoom blue hand notification if you wish to speak. Just a reminder, that is not an opportunity to ask a new substantive question. The format that we have is questions in advance. So if you have a new substantive question, I would suggest you take that outside the meeting. But I'm happy to pick up points of clarification and general comments after each question. So over to you, Councillor Kevin Mitchell, for your first question, please.
Thank you, Chair. My first question, thank you for the update within the report regarding COVID measures implemented within the Waste, Recycling and Fleet Service, reference page 17. Can the portfolio holder or an officer please confirm similar COVID measures have occurred within the MRF, e.g. social distancing, PPE, ensuring adequate ventilation and adequate COVID-safe break facilities, stroke increased drinks breaks due to the presumed use of masks. Thank you very much.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. I can assure you that the health and welfare of our staff is very much at the top of our list of priorities. Yes, indeed, we have completed similar measures in the MRF, including, but not limited to, face masks, PPE, social distancing, increased hand washing facilities, staggering of break times to enable social distancing, all in line with government guidance on factories, and a COVID-19 safe risk assessment was produced in conjunction with our health and safety teams in unison. So we are doing as much as we possibly can in line with government guidance to protect our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Mitchell, do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you, Chair, and thank you to the portfolio holder for that reassurance.
Thank you very much. In that case, it's your opportunity to answer your second question, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. My second question, can the portfolio holder or an officer update the committee on how the pandemic has impacted upon the revenue we receive from our recyclables, and whether any contracts have been changed, meaning our recyclables are being sent elsewhere?
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Yes, indeed, I can comment on that. And the answer is badly. Revenue has gone down considerably because the global demand for recyclable materials has dropped. However, we are still using our usual processes because that's where the best prices and the best service is to be obtained, and no changes have been made. And again, I would like to reiterate that we are deeply concerned and always have been about the audit trail for recyclable materials, and we would not wish to send our materials in such a way that we had no audit trail and we're not able to know exactly where they went. I see the director might want to make a comment on that indeed as well, to add to that.
If I may, Chair. Yeah, so just to add a little bit of context to that. So the value of recyclables goes up and down generally throughout the year anyway. And in this year, it has gone up and down more drastically as economies come on and off stream, depending on the local lockdowns in their particular area. For example, when China went into a lockdown and their manufacturing output dropped, the market for cardboard disappeared virtually overnight. We've always managed to use our own reprocessors. For example, when that happened, we were able, and we are currently sending our cardboard to France, and we are getting approximately £40 a tonne better than most of our near neighbours. So we're getting normally nearly double the value. And that's down to the skill of the recycling team there. They're searching out the best deals for us and maximising the value of that material. So it's yeah, they're working very hard to preserve the income, but it has dropped.
Thank you, David. That's helpful. Councillor Mitchell, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Chair. Firstly, that was very reassuring again, so thank you. Picking up on the point by the Director regarding items obviously being sent elsewhere, i.e. France, can he update, maybe not at this meeting, but at a later point, us on the potential impact of Brexit and whether that there will have an impact on recyclables being sent to Europe and elsewhere?
You're welcome to say something now if you'd like to, but that's quite a big question. You want to come back to another side. David, yeah, please do.
We don't actually think it's going to make any difference because that section on waste is enshrined in legislation. So we don't think, and at the moment, all of that is still being worked out. But because we go through reprocessors that have been preparing this for a long time, we don't think it will actually make a difference. We try and use mainly UK reprocessors, so all of our plastics and things like that go to the UK, and there's only a few items that go out of the country. For example, fishing nets. As you know, we do a lot of work as part of the Ocean Recovery Project, and we collect lots of fishing nets from ports and UK beach cleans, and they used to have to go to Denmark, but we're working with a UK reprocessor now to have that converted into pelletized, converted back into ocean going kayaks. So we're always looking to try and reduce the carbon footprint. So at the moment we don't think it'll have an impact.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, to further amplify that, Councillor Mitchell, DASWA, Devon Area Strategic Waste Committee, which is a federation of all the local authorities in Devon, as I'm sure you know, are working very hard and have lobbied all the MPs to seek support for locally based receptors, recycling plants to recycle materials, and there is talk that Viridor are thinking of opening a facility in Bristol. I'm not as yet aware of whether that's going to go ahead or not, and which recyclable materials will be welcomed by them. But you can rest assured again that we are doing all we can to reduce the carbon miles of having to transport items around the country in order for recycling of things into such things as, I know it's very dear to the director's heart, as ocean-going kayaks, but we are working very hard on it in conjunction with our other colleagues across the county.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to take, and apologies I forgot to do this with the first question, so I'm happy to take points of clarification or comments on this topic for either questions 1 or 2. So that's COVID safety at the MRF and the global demand for recyclable materials. If there are any, please indicate. Seeing anybody? Okay. Oh, Councillor Foggin. You're on mute, Councillor Foggin.
Yeah, I've got a couple of clarifications I haven't really wanted to know about. Is the cyclists, we've gone down turf quite a bit through the lockdown, and the speeding of cyclists, they're horrendous. In fact, they're actually pushing us away up the top where there's no distancing. Is there anything you can do? I mean, the day we were there, one day in particular, the Sustrans were there, and I did talk to them about it. And, you know, it's quite dangerous. You know, these men in their lycra just speeding past you, no consideration for you, because it's all about them. It's not about anyone else. Is there anything we can do? Because after all, we do want to promote cycling. We want to get people, you know, out of their cars, on bikes, but they're not helping the situation. Is there anything you can do about that? And the other thing, what I'd like to ask is the key of a weekend. It really affects disabled people, older people. It gets so packed that actually social distancing is practically impossible. And I find this quite worrying. Is that something you could be looking at?
These are essentially substantive new questions. So I would suggest, rather than linger on them now, that we make a note of those, if that's okay, Howard, and we ask the portfolio holder and/or director to come back to you outside the meeting on that. Is that all right, Councillor Foggin? Sorry, but I think that, although I know there's there's some crossover in terms of social distancing issues, they are kind of slightly different points, and we do need to stick to the rules. So we'll move on if there are no other points, and I'm not seeing anybody else indicate, to question 3, which is Councillor Kevin Mitchell again. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Can the portfolio holder or an officer update the committee on the progress or any delays with regard to the planned implementation of food and glass doorstep collections, which was originally due to be implemented in the summer of next year? Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes, again, thank you, Councillor Mitchell. As I'm sure you're aware, the complete change of a waste collection and recycling service is extremely complex with many interdependencies. So, for example, we have to ensure the provision and supply of vehicles. We have to ensure that the receivers of all our waste recycling are able, whoever they may be, to receive our product in an appropriate form. So there's a lot of interdependent work that needs to be done. So since the Cabinet report, which approved the changes, the officers have been working extremely hard. And as I recall, I referred to this at the last meeting of this committee on the lack of resources which are available to them and how they had to continue to do their day jobs as well as implementing the research and the effort in order to ensure that we have a successful transition. So the officers have been working very hard, and in particular, how it works in an urban environment. They've reached out to our neighbours who mostly, in fact all, have a rural and urban context. So if you look at East Devon, for example, there's the whole of the rural hinterland and then the small urban areas of Exmouth and Axminster, Honiton, Cranbrook, etc., which is very different in context to where we are here in Exeter. So we've looked at operational performance, we've looked at local impact on traffic and the feedback from residents. So having taken all that information on board, we've then been in detailed conversations with vehicle manufacturers regarding suitable specifications, and we have also explored their programs to introduce electric alternatives, because as you well know, we've got a 2030 carbon zero target to meet, and we're also, and this is where independencies come in, and we are also in the process of developing our own solar field. Now, there's absolutely no point in building a operational depot which has electric recharging unless we've got electric trucks. It's also no point in buying or acquiring electric trucks if we haven't got any recharging. So these things need to be worked together. And the market for electric vehicles is moving more slowly than we would like. The timing of the charging and any vehicle deliveries, charging facilities and vehicle deliveries is absolutely key. To move on then to the second element that I mentioned about integrating the whole of the waste cycle. The MERV team have been working with manufacturers to come up with a range of detailed technical specifications for the MERV processing equipment, examining the most modern and efficient equipment available and configuring it to fit into the limited space in the existing building. All of this whilst trying to continue to allow our residents to recycle the widest variety of materials at their doorstep. COVID-19 has lengthened manufacturing times for vehicle and machinery, but perhaps more importantly, it has changed the way people shop and the quantities of what they recycle. This too has to be factored into the collection regime to make sure we don't build in inefficiency from day one. Also, we are a waste collection authority, as again, I'm sure you're well aware, and not the disposal authority. So we have to make sure that our collection regime fits into the Devon-wide disposal arrangements. And this requires a considerable amount of negotiation and discussion with our colleagues at Devon. So this project has a great deal of complexity and interdependencies. The work so far has raised concerns that curbside sort may not be the most suitable system for Exeter, and the team are researching other systems which offer the collection of food waste and glass at the curbside, but potentially offer greater facilities for the use of electric vehicles and increase the carbon savings offered by the proposal. Once this review is complete, and should any changes be proposed, the paper will come back through the proper channels to keep you all informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Mitchell, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Chair. As I believe the Chair and portfolio holder will be aware, pre-COVID, I think there is an agreement from this committee that a standing item would be put on the agenda for a regular update on this very key piece of work. So I was wondering whether the portfolio holder and the Chair via the programme board would be willing to revisit that, because I do think scrutiny has to play a very key part throughout the whole of this.
Yes, I don't have any difficulty with us doing that, Councillor Mitchell, having a regular update.
Yeah, and I completely agree, and we will liaise outside this meeting to ensure that that happens at the appropriate stage. It may be that the next meeting, which is February, comes too soon, but I don't know. We'll work out when that update is most appropriate. But absolutely, it is a standing order on our normal agenda, so we will return to it. I'm happy to take any points of clarification or comments on this question, if there are any. I'll raise one of my own, if I may, in that case, which is just to get a sense. I appreciate there's a lot of work going on in the background here, but if curbside sort is one option, what are the other options for curbside collection? Is sort the pejorative word here? Is that is it a different system of curbside collection as potential alternative?
Right.
You can say on that.
Okay, Dave. It's okay, David. I can do this. Yeah. Right. Curbside sort involves stopping a vehicle at the curbside where residents have placed their recycling and waste materials. They are then placed in the vehicle in their separate entities. So waste would go somewhere, glass would go somewhere, whatever. But that's being at the vehicle at the roadside, as opposed to being sorted at the depot. Yep. So now we will need to keep some materials separate from each other, and the questions are which materials need to be kept separate, how they can be kept separate, and so on. It's an extraordinarily complicated business. I had no idea how difficult it was going to be. I'm glad the director and his team have. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, David?
Yes, if I may, Chair. I think that the options available to us, whatever we do, we will be collecting glass and food at the curbside, because that's what the residents of Exeter want, and that is where the government legislation is going. Good. It's just how we do that and what the mix of materials are. So there are options where we could keep the commingled service and then just add on a separate food and glass collection. And what that offers is an opportunity to have smaller vehicles in the fleet which are more easily electrified. So those electric chassis are already out there. So that might accelerate the electrification of the fleet. So you kind of need to weigh all those things up, and that's the proposal. That's what we're looking at the moment, comparing those kind of options with the curbside sort option, which needs larger, more dedicated vehicles, which are more difficult to get an electric version of. It might come, those electric versions might come, but the market there is much slower than smaller vehicles. So we just need to weigh that up.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much, both of you, for that. That's clear. Any further points of clarification or comments on this topic? No, nobody indicating. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to question 4. That's from Councillor Michael Mitchell. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. This is referenced on page 19 of the report. When does the portfolio holder envisage that the full graffiti removal service can be reinstated?
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. The answer is at the start of the next financial year.
Nice succinct answer. Councillor Mitchell, do you have a supplementary?
Short question, short answer. It's just that this, in our own particular ward, this is becoming an increasingly concerned issue raised by residents with us, and we're finding that the amount of graffiti is increasing on a daily basis. It's not weekly, it's a daily. Even this morning, in a 500-yard walk from my house, there are 4 new sets of graffiti. And for example, we have one here at the bottom of Pennsylvania Road that appeared this morning, 30 foot long, be actively anti-racist. Well, all of us agree with the slogans of these people who are putting these things on, but I don't think the community appreciate the amount of effort that has to go in to remove this stuff, to restore what was already there. So I'm just hoping that the portfolio holder will put pressure on his team of other portfolio holders to see if this service can be reinstated as soon as possible, because I think there's going to be a backlog to deal with next April.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. That's a pertinent point, and perhaps just for any members of the public watching, just be useful just to reiterate the reasons why the pause has been placed on money for graffiti.
Could I just add one point? So at the moment, individuals have to log into the council website with a photograph and give information on it. Could I point out, I think technology has slightly overcome the Exeter website, because in fact, you can only put a 2 megabyte photograph on, and most people with ordinary cameras on their phones these days, each individual photograph is bigger than that. So it does become slightly more complex trying to download. So could the authority look at increasing the space for downloading photographs so that public can access the system more easily?
We'll count all that as one supplementary. Thanks, Councillor Councillor Harvey or David Bartram?
Yeah, I can do the first bit. Yes, Councillor Mitchell, we are well aware that there is a backlog of graffiti that is across the city which needs to be dealt with. And yes, we are, as I said, planning to reintroduce the full service at the start of the next financial year. However, we still maintain a service, and I think you need to be clear about this. We still maintain a service. Racist, divisive, obnoxious graffiti will be cleaned by our team, and that's why we require the photographs in order that the team can define which pieces of graffiti are so horrid that they need to be cleaned immediately. Why do we not operate the full service? Due to the pandemic, as I'm sure you're absolutely aware, our income, the City Council's income, has declined dramatically. I won't go through the litany of what we don't get anymore. And we have a legal obligation to maintain a balanced budget. Some of our services are legally required, they're statutory services, and so we are maintaining those at the level we're required to, which means that other services which possibly may be very close to people's hearts are being starved of cash, and we can't continue with. And this is a fact of life, that you can't go through a pandemic. I understand that we have spent billions of pounds as a nation on PPE. You go and look at the new Nightingale Hospital down on Southern. That's cost somebody a shed load of money. There simply isn't the money about these days, so that's why we've had to reduce some of our services that we would rather not do. But I can assure you, Councillor Mitchell, this is very high on my list of priorities. And in this service area, as I said right at the very beginning, and if you look at the report, we have concentrated very hard on maintaining services, and we have arranged our staffing arrangements so that if we have difficulties such as other local authorities around us have had, then we have staffing arrangements which are flexible enough to maintain the absolutely vital services such as burials, such as bin collections, etc., etc. And that is what we are concentrating on. Our hands are tied behind our back, but our staff and officers are doing an absolutely amazing job to keep going what we are keeping going. And as I said, new financial year, I very much hope that the full graffiti service will be restored. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. David Bartram, did you want to add anything there?
The only thing was around the 2 megabyte limit. So I wasn't aware that that was there. So I'll talk to our IT team and our website team and just see if we can get that raised. Because you're right, you know, a standard mobile phone picture is more than that. So I'll see what we can do.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Oliver.
I find graffiti very interesting. Bristol has a graffiti tour you can do, and I would recommend anybody, when it's safe, goes on it. They recently had a graffiti festival, which was a community effort, and whereas I understand we're short of money, it would be possible for a small group to apply for a grant through our COVID Action Fund to do some graffiti in a socially distanced way, and that might be a cost-effective way to cover up any negative graffiti. A further point is that I think graffiti gives a way for people who are disenfranchised to express their voice. I think that's really important. You're going to have to excuse my language here, but when I was in Bristol, there was a piece of graffiti which changed Bank of England to Bank of England. And I could echo that sentiment when we have a government who have used quantitative easing and bonds to make a magic money tree, and yet are only able to give 37 pence a week increase to people on universal credit. So I think graffiti is important. I'm really worried if we're thinking of prioritising any money that could be spent helping people who are struggling to eat and heat on graffiti removal. I understand that there's ring fence budgets. I understand the community like their area to look nice, but we are living in unprecedented times and we're all going to have to help each other out or people will really struggle.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. We'll take that as a point well made. I don't think we should enter a debate on that, but I would just add, as far as I'm aware, people can, or community groups can still get loan of graffiti cleaning materials if they wish to. Is that right?
We don't normally lend out graffiti cleaning materials because it's a hazardous chemical.
Oh, okay.
And so you need kind of specialist training and a lot of PPE to use it. So it's
I thought there used to be
problematic.
A kit. There used to be some sort of kit that could be.
There's a set of wipes, but they don't really work on brickwork. So you can get graffiti wipes which work on shinier surfaces. But it's certainly not the material we use for removing graffiti.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Henson. You're on mute, Councillor Henson. Unmute and start again if you would.
Beg your pardon. Could I ask, is Councillor Oliver recommending people go around graffiti spraying, because that's what she seems to be.
I'm not going to, as I said, I'm not going to enter into a debate this evening about this. This is.
And can I come back to you on something?
Just a second.
It's something to do with the wipes.
Okay. Yep. Please do, Councillor Henson. Point of clarification only, please. Over to you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. But we were shown that a few years back, that when we had a problem with graffiti, that we could have a certain amount to do it and then take off ourselves. And I went on a tour with that. So there is something that one of the councillors did bring up just now. There is something of the truth on what the person was talking. I can't remember which one it was, but there was something that we could spray to take it off if it was in your ward, but you had to have proper gloves and wipes, etc., etc. It might be worth again investigating that.
Thank you. Anything further to add on that, or David?
I'll go back to the team and see if we've got anything that is suitable, and come back to the committee.
Thank you very much. Any further points of clarification or comments on this topic? Councillor Warwick.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Chair, yesterday we saw in Parliament Matt Hancock and Jonathan Ashworth, the Secretary of State for Health and the Shadow Secretary of State for Health, pledging cross-party support for the vaccine, which hopefully we all hope will be a huge success later this year and into next year. But there are conspiracy theories out there about the vaccine. I just wondered, from David's point of view, and rightly so, and I understand the points you make about costs and money, but I just wondered whether the antisocial graffiti that we see, the racism, the sexism, that kind of thing, would that also include the anti-vaccine, from the conspiracy theorists?
That's a great question. Who wants to take that one?
I think that's a political question, not a practical or operational question. I think if we look at graffiti overall, some people see it as an art form. The Banksy's, for example, which I believe originated in Bristol, are now worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. Some people see all graffiti as offensive because it's defacing the building that it's on. So I think our definition is offensive graffiti, and I am very happy to talk with the team about what they would define as offensive, what we would define as offensive. As Councillor Oliver has pointed out, some graffiti which people would find extremely offensive, others see purely as a wake-up call to established interests that perhaps not everybody agrees with them. So yes, I'll take that point on board. Thanks very much, Councillor Warwick, about adding to racist, sexist, whether or not conspiracy theory graffiti should be seen as offensive. We'll take that on board and we'll look at it and we'll come back with an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. That sounds a sensible suggestion. This is an interesting topic, and perhaps unexpectedly so. And I think perhaps for Councillor Oliver's benefit, we might want to consider graffiti and how we approach the differences between offensive graffiti and arts, and what the council's attitude is. Perhaps a task and finish group could be set up on this. That might be something members want to think about, and we can take that outside the meeting. But please do come back to me and share your thoughts on that, and I can take that to the programme board if that's something that would be of interest. We can certainly go down that route, because I appreciate there's a debate to be had, but not the place and time this evening. Any further points of clarification or comments on this topic before we move on? No. Okay, we will move on then, and before we do so, we'll thank Councillor Harvey and David Bartram very much indeed for your discussion this evening and presentation of the report, for all the work on the report, which is extremely useful and interesting. Some very important topics discussed. So thank you very much for your time. You're obviously welcome to stay, but don't feel you have to if you need to get on. And we will move on to Councillor Hussain as portfolio holder for Communities and Culture to briefly present the note relevant to her portfolio, which members will have had the opportunity to read. Over to you, Councillor Hussain.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair. I would like to say, well, of course, my portfolio has got two aspects to it, which are very well integrated, which are the communities and culture. So I'm going to start very quickly with culture. With communities. You have a full update report available in pages 29-33. These reports are presented, but what I like to call the 4 branches of communities offerings, and these are the reports are from Wellbeing Exeter and from Exeter Connect, which is a voluntary sector support service, as well as the Citizens Advise Exeter, another appointed service by Exeter City Council, and the last branch is the grants. So you find in the report some reports are quite comprehensive really, and others are shorter, but they're all very well representing the branches and update on what's happening in the last 3 months, and some all the way up to 9 months. I'm going to go now to the other half of my portfolio, which is culture. And the report that has been, there's only one report on culture, which is pages 21-27, and it's almost exclusively by the RAM. Despite the fact, I didn't know when the RAM had time to have all of these activities. I mean, they were closed most of the time, actually the vast majority of the time through COVID. Nevertheless, they managed to have fantastic offering online and very rich offering at that. I can't pick and choose, but there's if you've been to roaming with the RAM, the lockdown legends, the digital content on collections, and please continue, because this is continuing right after, is the 100 First Women, and so on. So many programs, and it is amazing how they could do that. I'm really full of admiration. Although there are no other updates included on other arts or heritage organization or groups, this is far from what actually happened in reality on the ground. There's lots of activities happening. For example, because I've been visiting since I've been started my cultural portfolio in September, I've been visiting all of these different aspects in offerings of culture in our city. And some of these were like the Custom House, which has got its own UNESCO Cities platform. So they have got a whole load of stuff online as well. The Corn Exchange that remained open for blood donations, and they are preparing for a pantomime, I hope, and in Christmas. We have the Matlock Center, which has been continuing trading in livestock all through and having their own, again, market. Visit Exeter, in Exeter, the Northcote, the Phoenix, the library, all of them have adapted their offering to and try to change very quickly and give alternative things to our citizens. So I am, I'm very, very impressed. I know we don't have the reports, but the offerings are there, and it was all online, and I have been going from one meeting to another and from one activity to another all through the last 3 months. So so I'm sorry that there's no report, but I assure you, and I'm sure if you go to the city center and others, you will see some of the activities happening. I have to say today, because we have a Christmas after that, and conditions might change completely after that. We don't know, because the vaccination is coming. I have been truly amazed and touched through the whole of the last 9 months by the positive community spirit that the city has prevailed throughout the city, and the determination of all sectors of the community and culture to keep trying, adapting, looking forward, working together, and overcoming adversity. I'm lucky, very lucky to be, and about me, and I don't know about you, but I'm very lucky to be living in a city called Exeter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hussain. Questions from a member of the committee, Councillor Michael Mitchell, have been received. Councillor Mitchell is invited to read out his questions in the order set out in the list, and the portfolio holder and/or director, JP Hedge, will respond. As I don't need to read out the format again of this, but I will come back for supplementaries and then open it up as we did previously. So, Councillor Michael Mitchell, your question 1, please.
Thank you, Chair. Reference page 23. In view of the excellent work the RAM were already undertaking in regard to online engagement, could they act as a hub partner for other heritage and visitor attractions within the city? This could help present a more holistic view of what makes Exeter so special.
Yes, we are incredibly proud of, as I just said, about the digital engagement of the RAM that has done during the pandemic. We will, of course, and I mentioned a little bit about it, we will of course continue to work with our partners in the heritage and cultural sector. There are offerings, as I said, online, that not as well publicized. The RAM is excellent in publicizing its activities. Other sectors too. I mean, I attended one of the provisions by Custom House. We have a literary residence, poet in residence, and he's offering literature, lecture talks, etc. online. So there are other things happening, but they haven't been publicized in the same way, and not as good as the RAM. The RAM is absolutely excellent, but yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell, do you have a supplementary?
Not on that one, thank you, no.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other points of clarification or comments on that topic from members? Councillor Hanson.
Can I, I would like to ask some questions on the grants, but would you like me to ask them after the questions have been finished from Councillor Mitchell?
They need to be relevant to one of the questions Councillor Mitchell has.
All right, fine. I'll wait until the end. Thank you, Chairman.
We will come back to you. Any other members wish to speak at this point? Nope. Okay. All right. We'll move on to your question 2, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. Reference page 29. What formal audit or survey does the council intend to undertake to ascertain the most successful elements of the work undertaken by Exeter Community Wellbeing?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Exeter Connect, the council's voluntary sector infrastructure support partner, commissioned this report following the first lockdown. The report that they commissioned, you can see a detailed report that have commissioned, and it was published online, and it is on our website. Many of the insights and learning from this report have been adopted and improved the platform for the second national lockdown period. Power BI, the name of the portal used to harvest this data, reporting provides daily intelligence on call themes and outcomes for residents, which officers use to ensure the right support offered in place for residents. Exeter Connect have regular monthly updates as well as Exeter City Council, we publish regular updates about the number of people that are asking for help, what kind of help, even the location is the city. Very detailed information is available. Anybody, sorry, would you like to add any more to this, James?
Yes, please do, James, if you want to.
Thank you, Chair. Just following up a second point around the data and information. We have a weekly meeting with parts of Exeter Community Wellbeing that come together to provide the response during COVID. And in this particular recent period, we are having a daily view of this that through our team and reviewing the data on a
we can't hear a word on
that. Is everybody having trouble? You're sort of
yes.
James, sorry. Don't know what.
Sorry, is the sound better now? I've turned my camera off.
That sounds better. Yeah, go for that.
Apologies. So during the most recent period of COVID lockdown, we've been analysing information on a daily basis through Power BI, which, as Councillor Gassain said, tells us the individual resident cases that we receive into the customer service team on a daily basis, their geography, what their issues are, and what outcomes we are achieving for those individuals. And that's helping us to kind of shape the offer moving forward. So we're able to target food support, well-being support, prescription support on the back of that daily information. We're preparing weekly reports on that information, which audits all of those calls into the customer services team, and we'd be happy to provide that through Councillor Gassain should people wish to see that information.
Thank you very much, James. That was loud and clear. Thank you. Councillor Mitchell, do you have a supplementary?
Yes. If there is a third wave of the pandemic in the January-March period, does Exeter Community Wellbeing have the resources to cope?
Yes, the short answer is yes. Not only we have the resources, we are so well geared up now and so practiced that when the second lockdown came, we were already completely in gear, as it were. We stepped up immediately and just resumed, because from the first lockdown, we learned so much because of these reports from local community active groups and mutual aid groups. We actually learned so much from these reports, and we plugged all the gaps or all the bits that were not perfect. And I think we can always step up very, very quickly if needs be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gassain. James, did you want to add anything there?
No, that's covered it. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay. Any member wish to ask a point of clarification or make a comment on this question, on this topic? Okay, can't see anybody indicating, so we will move on to your question 3, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. reference page 30. With regard to digital inclusion, this IT initiative relates to primary age school children. What support, if any, is being provided for children in the 11 to 16 age range?
Right, I'm going to give you a short answer first, then the beefed one, the beefed up one that I wrote myself, if you have the time. The first one is, at present, the council is not providing any direct support on this age group. The education strand of the city recovery plan is identifying priorities in this area. Primary school age children were identified as the key initial priority to focus on. This is very short to what I would like to add to this answer, if I may, which I just want to point to Councillor Mitchell that there is a recently published document, which I think all councillors have got, which is by Livable Exeter, Building Exeter Back Better Recovery Plan. In that plan, we have education recovery group. If you go to pages in that report, if you go to pages 48 to 51, the document, they brought together key representatives of the educational sectors in Exeter, and they put the priorities for what we wanted to happen in Exeter. And this particular focus is on digital inclusion, which is access to suitable devices for learning, access to broadband and skills within the household to support learning. So this was a priority for Exeter Recovery Plan in education. I just want to remind Councillor Mitchell that Exeter City Council has no direct responsibility whatsoever on provisions of educational aspects. This is the domain of Exeter Devon as Devon County Council. So it's not us. Nevertheless, we were so infused with our partners, we were so enthused with this aim that when there was a need for this, we actually stepped to that mark and we contributed financially, and the details is in the report. We contributed financially. We chose as Exeter City Council to put some money into this initiative. Yes.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
I'd just like to add, sorry, I forgot.
No, please do.
I'd just like to add that this is one of the steps. There are other steps. Actually, the report that I was talking about aims to provide 1,500 devices, and that would cost $500,000. This is an ambition, but the first step that was achieved so far was to provide 50 devices for primary schools. And these 50 devices are administered, managed by the Ted Ragg Trust. They form the digital library that can be children who need to, or schools who need to borrow these digital devices will be able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Mitchell, do you have a supplementary?
Whilst I appreciate we're not an education authority, and even Devon as an education authority has control over only a limited number of schools within the county with the academy system, I think particularly in the light of today's announcement by the government on the changes to GCSE for next year and A-level for next year, I think there is a need to not accentuate disadvantage in the 11 to 16 age range of students who do not have access at home to IT compared to their compatriots who do. And I would hope that we, both as a committee and as a council, would try to pressurise Devon County Council and any other BR members of Parliament to try to ensure it's a level playing field in relation to the new GCSEs next year and A-levels, that the shortcuts don't accentuate disadvantage for those who've not got access to IT.
Well, I can only add to this that this is one of our priority aims as a city, and all our partners in the city, we have this as a priority aim. Yeah. All we could do is continue. Actually, it's amazing that the report has been published just less than a month ago, and we're already achieving some of the targets and asks that we, with our partners, and it's a huge partner, this is Livable Exeter board, have put forward, and we're trying to achieve them. We've already achieved one little step. I understand completely as a teacher, an ex-teacher, that we should do that. The digital gap is very important, and we must try to bridge it as soon as we can. However, yeah, you know the situation. Thank you.
The issue is there is a specific issue next summer for a specific cohort of students who are already disadvantaged.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mitchell. We'll take that as a comment.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Hussain has explained the kind of the perimeters of what the Ecstasy Council can do, but that we are going above and beyond, which is commendable. And we can all agree that what's being done is great. But of course, there is more needed. And, I'm sure that pressure will be put on Devon County Council and local MPs. I'm happy to take any comments from other members or questions of clarification on that topic. Councillor Henson.
I would like to say that to Councillor Hussain is that the RAM has worked very well, and it's a great thing to see one of our treasures sort of succeeding in bad times when, you know, things could go wrong. There is several things that I would like to bring up if Councillor Hussain could help in some way.
Just to keep you to topic, the RAM question has kind of been and gone. I mean, I'm happy to allow it. If it's,
no, it's not. I'm just.
If you've got a series of questions, I'm just mindful that it needs to stay on the topic of this question because that's how we're managing it.
What the question is involved in Councillor Hussain's report.
Indeed, but we take it question by question. So, could you ask your question relevant to the RAM, if there is one, and if your other questions are relevant?
No, I was just saying to say that we are blessed with the fact and our culture is quite rich in Exeter. But it's the community grants I really would like to ask about.
We're coming on to that. If you have a question on, that's the next question indeed. If you have a question on the digital inclusion, the IT initiative, I'm happy to take that now. Otherwise, we'll wait for the next one.
We'll wait for that one.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Any other points from members at this point? No. Okay. We will. In that case, we will move on to question 4. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. Question 4, page 30. Is it intended that a more detailed analysis will be presented regarding the allocation effectiveness of the funds distributed via COVID community grants and the COVID Wellbeing Support Fund?
Again, I've got a short answer and a long answer. I'll go with the short one first. There will be need to be discussed with relevant grants panels and key officers as to that level of information that is relevant and appropriate for members. An evaluation of the grants made available to community groups in the first lockdown is available on our website, and I've got here the address or the link of the website. What I will do, because I went to it myself, and it is very, very useful, but it's a long one. So if you want, Councillor Mitchell, I will email it to you as soon as I can.
If you can email that to all members of this committee, that would be great. Thank you.
It's very, very good, detailed analysis, etc. The other point I wanted to say, we will continue to provide similar information on our website, and when we get the evaluation report, 1 month, we have this stipulation that for all applicants for grants, that 1 month after the deadline, all application grants have got a beginning, a start date and an end date. So at the end date, they are all 1 month, they're all supposed to submit an evaluation report on the impact of the fund on the project or the community that they were doing. So this is a routine thing that we do all the time, regarding grants. So I also want to remind Councillor Mitchell that the Exeter grant programme approved by Council was suspended from March 27, 2020, replaced by COVID-19 Emergency Action Fund. The Action Fund is still in play now, and as long as the COVID-19 restrictions continue, the COVID-19 Action Fund sole purpose is to provide fast financial support to communities immediate needs to get through the pandemic lockdowns and tier restrictions. So this is, as I said before, the whole grant program that was approved by Council last year, towards the end of last year, has changed dramatically to provide for needs arisen during COVID. So it's almost directed in that way. So it's not our normal, as it were, whatever normal is, program on offer at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Mitchell, do you have a supplementary?
Not on that question, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll come to you, Councillor Hanson, for your question on grants.
Oh, thank you. I would like to say that on the grants, we've got a situation in front of us, and I hear what Councillor Gazane is saying. We are scrutinising this grants, by which case, could I ask why we are giving, there is no breakdown on, I'm looking in particular at Exeter Chiefs Foundation. I have no objection to giving money to the foundation, but are we aware of any of them? Do we know what they're spending it on? And it's not just put into the pot, because I must remind committee that in fact in local communities, we have to give detailed details on what the money is spent on for communities, whatever. Now, I am utterly surprised that £100,000 has been given to Exeter Chiefs, the foundation.
Councillor Hanson,
no, let me finish,
It's the other way around. It's the other way around.
They've given it to us.
Exeter Chiefs have given generously.
To us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
No,
yes.
that's fine.
Yes.
But can I go and thank you? That's my mistake. My apologies. But I'm equally that if indeed the question still exists, do we make sure that when we give money to our less well off or deprived ones, do we make sure that they are use the money in the right place and not just put it in the pot? That's one question. Then there is no information, because government has already said that it's giving cities where we have lost money and where we have to put out money, that we will have certain monies back from the government. And there is nothing in the last two reports that there is money coming back from the government, or each department will receive. Are we going to get a sight of that eventually when we when that money is come in from government? Because several councillors have commented how bad this is, but nothing for what you are receiving.
You're talking about government grants to the local authority.
Yeah, they said they were going to give money back.
What different area? And I'm not sure Councillor Gazane.
Councillor Hanson, every single penny that Exeter City Council is spending in this emergency fund has nothing to do with the government. This is council money.
No, I'm quite well aware that we're spending it out, but the government
has said... It's not from the government. It's not from the government. The source of that money is not from the government.
Councillor Henson, if you're talking
Could
about
I finish?
Just a second. Let me just get to a point of clarification here. If you're talking about the money that the council receives from the government, and you're talking specifically about additional money that is provided under COVID, that is not the question we're discussing here. And we have actually looked at this question in a previous committee. And I think it's been there's been a members' briefing. It's come up at executive and at full council. So there is information out there. And I would urge you to ask any questions you have about that outside this meeting. But on your first question, although it's slightly off topic because we're trying to talk about COVID and restricted to that, I'm happy to allow Councillor Gussain or James to come in on that in terms of the community grants.
The community grants are very well scrutinized. As I said, we have a full of applications, and these applications are detailed. And then after we get the money, we have an impact and evaluation, again in detail, where the money has gone, etc. Most of the organizations and the groups that apply for our funds are constituted, meaning that they have not just a chair, but also a secretary and a treasurer. So if we require very detailed penny by penny accounts, we get them, and that's what we do. And do you want to add anything, James?
No, just say thank you. No, thank you very much, Chairman.
James?
I would just like to add that we much like the information we're collecting from residents around the Exeter community wellbeing, we also collect robust information of every single grant that we receive and we distribute funding to, and we report on that on a quarterly basis, and we'd be happy to share that information.
Lovely, that's very helpful. Thank you, James. Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Any other points of clarification or comments on this topic before we move on? Okay, we'll move on to your question 5 then, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. Reference page 31. To what extent does the CEV programme and Exeter Connect work with Exeter Home Call, as it can be assumed there's a large client overlap?
Right, Councillor Mitchell, there is a misunderstanding, but it will come clearer as I go along. Program information regarding Exeter community well-being and its response work through Exeter Connect is cascaded across council services and communities to enable residents to access support. There is specific support for clinically extremely vulnerable, and during lockdown 1, direct communication was sent to residents identifying the support available and how to contact. During lockdown 2, clinically extremely vulnerable were also contacted directly by government. Future targeted work for specific communities will depend on a range of issues, such as levels of restrictions and direct support for clinically extremely vulnerable. What I'd like to say here as well, this clarification, Exeter Home Call are not conducted by Exeter Connect. Exeter Home Calls is a specific offer from Exeter City Council to put clinically extremely vulnerable in direct touch with connectors. Connectors are a different people. I think that the word connect confused you. Connectors are a more specialized care service, and they are in contact with GPs. GPs, when somebody goes to a GP, we know about the statistics that say 40% of visits to GPs are non-medical, have no medical issue, have got other issues, well-being, loneliness, depression, etc. If the GP wants, he can refer the patient to what we call a connector. A connector is a person that can contact the patient or the person in need directly, talk to them, visit them, and see their needs. It's a more care and well-being issue rather than anything to do with Exeter Connect. Exeter Connect works with community organizations. So they're two completely different things. It's just the word connect and connector is the confusing one here. Thank you. James, would you like to add anything? James, would you like to add anything?
Sorry, I'm having to keep turning my video off every time I speak. Apologies to the audience for that. Councillor Mitchell referred to Exeter home call, and he's absolutely right to say that there is, you would assume that there is a crossover in terms of people using that service through the council and clinically extremely vulnerable people. We've made sure that we've communicated directly with all clinically extremely vulnerable residents in the city for the offer that we have. And actually, as a result of the work during lockdown 1, which identified support for individuals around digital services, digital confidence, actually we're starting to have an internal conversation with Steve Carnell, who manages the Exeter home call service, about how we can support those residents with wider wellbeing needs other than just the service at the moment. So it's given us a great opportunity to look at those connections, and thanks for raising that.
Thank you, James. That's really helpful. Councillor Mitchell, do you have a supplementary? I've got Councillor Oliver and Councillor Foggin to come to.
Yes, just to as with other councillors, having visited home call, I was most impressed last autumn with the work they undertake. And it just seemed to me, in this particular crisis we're in at the moment, the idea of making daily contact with often those who are isolated and alone was a valuable service just in itself, irrespective of medical and other conditions and needs. Just that idea of someone to speak to each day was a useful thing. And I just wanted to find out how well it had been integrated into the systems that we're offering elsewhere in the city during the pandemic. And I'm pleased James has got back to the core of the issue, and there does appear to be an integration between the various services, because I think home call should be developed and we should be making it available to a wider range of citizens.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. I'm going to come to Councillor Oliver first, please.
I've had sight of the letter, both from national government and the local letter for citizens in Exeter to clinically extremely vulnerable people. And I have to say that it's extremely clear. It is offering a wide range of services, and it's very clear how the individual accesses them. So I think Exeter City Council has done extremely well in putting that together, that package together very quickly. And it was certainly very reassuring to the person that I know who received that letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Foggin.
Yeah, I've got to make a comment here about the way that things are working, Amal. I was a mental health nurse for nearly 40 years, and I'm very warmed by what I've just heard. I knew what was going on behind the scenes, but I've actually got some evidence as well. And I'm really warmed by what Exeter City Council are doing. It's not actually our remit, it's Devon County Council. Nevertheless, we're stepping up and we're doing a grand job. And I'd like to say on behalf of Exeter citizens, thank you for all your hard work. And I'm very proud to be a part of this organisation.
Thank you, Councillor Foggin. I'm sure we'd all echo that. That's a point very well said. Are there any other points of or questions of clarification or comments on this topic? Okay, don't think I've got anybody indicating. So we will, in that case, move on to your final question, Councillor Mitchell. Question 6, please.
Thank you. Reference page 32. There's likely to be a very large increase in the workload of Exeter Citizens Advice in 2021. What additional funding and or staffing does the team envisage is required to sustain the service throughout 2021?
Councillor Cassay.
Right, it says here, at the present, the council is committed to the 3-year contract in place with Exeter Citizens Advice. Regular monthly dialogue is being held with the service to plan for the future and identify priority areas to support residents throughout the winter into 2021 and beyond. I would like to add to this that the charity staff and volunteers swiftly moved to home working, providing free advice to clients. I am quoting this from a press release by Steve Barrable, which is the manager of Exeter Citizen Advice. And he says, with the help of grants, so there is money coming forward, with the help of grants from Devon Community Foundation, Exeter City Council, Devon County Council, and the National Lottery Community Fund. So if the Citizens Advice is requiring extra funds to employ extra people because we have extra demand, then there is some support there for this very valuable service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mitchell, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I was just particularly concerned, as most of us are, with the potential rise in unemployment when government measures are relaxed in the spring. We're concerned about housing when landlords and others can take action against tenants who haven't been able to pay the full rent during this period, and also the recent news of the collapse of the retail sector nationally. And that's before we see any collapse of local retail shops who cannot sustain themselves. And I'm just wondering whether in the work that Citizens Advice are doing, they'll need a particular task force, particularly in relation to the collapse of the retail sector and small businesses.
Maybe a question for them, but Councillor Hussain or...
Yes. Well, I have nothing to add. I know they do their best. I know that their workload has increased. I know unemployment is a huge thing. I don't think this is, unless James would like to add anything, it's not for me really.
James?
Yeah.
The only thing I would like to add there is that we're in regular dialogue with Steve and his team at Citizens Advice Exeter, so that we are forecasting demand for next year and working to identify priorities and continue to support Citizens Advice Exeter to keep providing the excellent service. And I've no doubt that that will evolve over coming months, and we'll make sure that we keep a close partnership with Exeter Citizens Advice to ensure that we're offering that service to residents.
Thank you, James. I'm happy to open it up, and I've got Councillor Oliver who wants to come in.
Yep, me again, I'm afraid. I'm lucky enough to be the City Councillor outside rep for Citizens Advice Bureau in Exeter, and I'm an observer at their meetings. And I have learned a tremendous amount. One of the main things I've learned, which I think is important for this discussion, is that they provide a lot of support to working families. Universal credit is a benefit that working families and unemployed people both claim. And the £20 increase to universal credit, which was initially brought in at some point in lockdown until April temporarily, wasn't actually extended to the standard working tax credits element for families that were working. There is a hope that this £20 increase will be sustained beyond April, that it will be extended to working families as well as unemployed people, and to those on legacy benefits who also weren't included in the original increase. But I think the fact is that it isn't just unemployed people who are struggling to eat, heat and find shelter. It is also working people and working families. And I totally agree with Councillor Michael Mitchell that we have a situation where the cost of a basic room in a shared house, which is what you're entitled to if you're under 35 in terms of the local housing allowance, falls far short of any reasonable accommodation that can be found in the private sector in Exeter. And it's a huge concern to me, and I'm sure all of us.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. That's very helpful, actually. That's with given your connection that you've come in there. Anybody else wish to make a comment or ask a question of clarification on this topic? Well, again, I think this is another area we may well wish to revisit over the course of the next year. It's a very, very important area, and the work of Citizens Advice is more vital than ever, and they're going to be, I know that they are under more strain than ever. So let's hope there's some central government money forthcoming as well. You live in hope. That brings us to the end of the questions for this evening. I want to thank very much our two portfolio holders for their time and their answers this evening, and to the questioners as well for some very good and pertinent questions, and for all the comments you've all made. I think it's been a useful and helpful meeting. Just to note before we finish, the date of the next meeting of the Customer Focused Scrutiny Committee will be, there it is on your screen, Thursday the 4th of February. It'll be here before you know it, so don't relax too much. So this is the last meeting we're going to have this year. There will be some discussions in the interim about how we proceed with the format of this meeting. I'm not going to ask you to discuss that now, but if you do have thoughts, then please, by all means, email me or Democratic Services or Councillor Michael Mitchell, who's the Deputy Chair, or all of us, and we'll take that to the programme board to discuss. And we've got a meeting, I think, next week or even this week, with them to discuss the next steps. But this brings us essentially to the end of that period of 10th of December. So Sharon, thank you. Thank you for that. So it's next week we meet, but this is the end of the format that we've established this year. So we may want to change it. We may want to continue. I think it's worked well, but has been limited in some aspects. We may want to expand a little bit depending what happens with COVID over the coming months. But just before I bring the meeting to an end, as it is the last scrutiny meeting of the year, I want to thank you all as members for your participation and your really valuable input into all this, and pass on from this scrutiny. I hope we can minute this and also ensure that it is passed on to all of our teams. The thanks of us as members of this committee for all the work the staff have done throughout this most extraordinary time. It has been exceptional. I think we can be very proud. We don't have to be party political. Across party, we can be very proud of our council and the way the city has managed this crisis. So we hope that all officers will have a good break over Christmas, and that things will be a little brighter next year. So thank you all. I will bring this meeting at this point to a close. Thank you all. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Chair.